Just had to switch over the slides a bit. But hello, I'm LaBreque. As Emma said, I am a professor here at UNH. And as a marketing professor, I was very interested in how both brands and consumers were using the metaverse. And so I'm doing this research along with Moeen Kendlari, another professor here at UNH. And so what we're going to be doing is presenting some of this early stage research that we have. And so starting off, we really had some questions as it related to NFTs, crypto, and kind of brand involvement in there. So the first question was really, when did this all start? And what made it really take off? And then from there, it's, from the consumer angle, what is getting consumers to get involved with NFTs? And what we're seeing on a daily basis almost is more and more brands are getting involved in this space. So how are they using them? And what are they doing to get involved in this space? And finally, what we're going to look at is where do we go from here? So here's a little pop quiz time. Does anyone know who this is? All right. Well, this is Mike Winkleman to be exact. And Mike is a digital artist. And so, up until October 2020, the most Mike had ever made off of a digital print, does anybody have a guess? What do you think he got, the most expensive digital print he got? $5. So actually, Mike made $100. So pretty good for a digital print, right? But then in October of 2020, he sold his first set of NFTs. Does anybody have a guess for the NFTs? Oh, we're not there yet. So actually, his first set of NFTs they sold for $66,666.66. So two of them at that apiece. So that's actually, we're looking at some pretty good growth here. By December of 2020, he sold a series of NFTs for $3.5 million. And then he sold his signature piece for $69 million through an auction at Christie's. And so I see a couple of you saying, wow. Well, his name is Beeple on Twitter. He had a similar reaction. And this is a family environment, so we did some creative editing here, but I'm sure you can fill in the words. And so this was an important part of the space, because what we think about here is what Christie's did was Christie's legitimized this NFT space. So is anyone here familiar with what Christie's is? Yes, so we've got some people that are familiar. Christie's is a 255-year-old auction house. And this was actually the first major auction house to ever auction off a purely digital art. So Christie's is famous for some pretty tremendous auctions. So this is actually the only known portrait of Shakespeare while he was alive. Didn't really have a great hairline, but man, he rocked the earring pretty well. It also had the last discovered painting of Leonardo da Vinci. So in other words, when Christie puts an item up for auction, it is not just any item. It is something pretty special. And so what this did is it gave some legitimacy to this NFT space. Now, what this did is this really kind of sent the meme economy into a bit of a craze and really brought it to the mainstream consumer's consciousness. So this graph that we have up here comes from Google Trends. And so it really represents search behavior in NFTs. And so right around the time of that Christie's auction, what happened is consumer interest in NFTs went crazy up until about February of this year. And then as many of the, we've heard about kind of the winter that's coming, after that time, since this year has kind of gone by, it's looked like they are starting to fall on their face. And so the question here that we really wanted to see was, let's get an idea of what these NFT holders and NFT buyers, let's get an insight into them. And so in March of this year, the CMO of Pepsi had kind of a really unique quote, because a lot of people were saying, well, this NFT space is dead. It was a fad, and it's come and gone, just like anything. And so Todd Kaplan, the CMO of Pepsi, had a really interesting quote, and because some of us can look at NFTs and we say, all right, well, this is Beanie Babies, but it's the digital version of them. And my hope is that if you've gotten anything out of today from our variety of speakers, one thing is that the things that are being created here today are important, and they're going to become a bigger and bigger part of our lives. Is it perfect now? Not exactly. We've seen that the Bored Apes, or we've seen the pixelated cats become NFTs that are selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there are even NFTs out there right now that have some utility associated with them. But this is going to only become a bigger and bigger part of our lives. And so it's important for us to really pay attention, specifically with regard to how consumers are viewing them and how brands are looking at them. So being researchers and data nerds, Moeen and I, we created a survey because we wanted to know, all right, well, what do customers think, what do consumers think about NFTs? What are their perceptions of NFTs? So we sent out a survey, and these are some of our early results as it relates to NFT ownership. And so before you think, wow, they're saying that 82% of people at least own NFTs. That's not at all. So when we sent out this survey, we mentioned that it was specifically about NFTs. So people that had never even heard of NFTs probably saw that and said, I have no idea what that is. I'm not taking that survey. And that was good, because what we really wanted to do is we wanted to gauge NFT ownership and why people bought NFTs. And so among NFT owners, or people that were particularly interested in NFTs, what we found is that for the most part, people only own a few NFTs. So 82% of the people that we surveyed, 82% of them owned between 1 and 10 NFTs. It's not like they owned, very few of them owned more than 50. And so it pretty much was grouped into this kind of casual NFT user group. And we've seen the adoption. Seth had a great adoption graph in his slides, and recent estimates suggest that about 3% of Americans currently own an NFT. So this is a small part of our population, and even this small part of our population only owns a few NFTs. So we're still in this very early stage of it. And so another question we had for them was, well, why do you buy NFTs? So does anybody have any ideas? This was supposed to come up later, so I guess now I've ruined my punchline of why would you buy NFTs? And there's a variety of reasons why. One of perhaps the most prominent ones is, well, I could make money. We probably had a friend that made a bunch of money and then most likely lost a bunch of money in crypto or the NFT space. I've had a couple friends, and so that was one reason that kind of stuck out to us. Another one was, they treat it as a store of value, as somebody would a classical painting can be a store of value and hold its value over time. But there are other reasons as well, and we've kind of discussed some of these. Some of them is you can have access to community, or you can get access to perks and deals, or it can be paired with a physical product. There are a variety of ways that NFTs can be used, and so what we had the people that responded to this survey do is we had them rank these according to how you rank these reasons for why you buy NFTs. And so what we did is we had them go through and rank why they bought these NFTs according to this list. And so what we had them, what emerged from this was what we found is that in general, there are a variety of reasons. There was not a whole lot of rhyme or reason across everyone as to what was the most preferred reason for buying an NFT. And anybody here who's taken my marketing analytics class should know that when there's a bunch of heterogeneity in a market, a good thing to do is to segment that market. And so what we did is we segmented that NFT buyer market. And what we came up with was 4 segments in this NFT buyer market. And one segment was abundantly clear. And that was this one over here on the left-hand side. And so 32% of the people in our sample, the 2 most important reasons, and by far the most important reasons why they bought NFTs, was that they bought NFTs to make money, and NFTs because they are a good store of value. In other words, these people view NFTs as purely investment assets. It's an alternative asset in the investment portfolio. Now, one thing really stuck out to us here is that sure, some of the other segments said, making money, the possibility of making money with NFTs is a very attractive part, and one of the reasons that I buy NFTs. But the least important reason to every other segment, and this was a very, very strongly ranked the last option in terms of importance, was as a store of value. In other words, they weren't buying NFTs as collectibles. So in other words, we had one clear segment where NFTs are basically this asset that you pick up, you hold on to, and then you sell for more money. The other groups, they were looking for other sorts of perks when it came to buying NFTs. Some of them were looking to support causes, or to support their favorite artists, or to get access to communities. And so what we saw from this is, all right, well, for 32% of the market, they're really in this for the investment side of it. But for the majority of the market, actually, what they're looking for is they're looking for ways to possibly engage with the community, to engage with artists, to engage with causes that they support. In other words, we saw an opportunity where brands could step in, and that could be the sandbox that they play in. And so what we did is we found a database from Ad Age that has a continually updated list of brands that are getting involved with NFTs. And what we've done so far, and this list continues to be updated, and probably as I speak right now, some other brand has been added to the list. And so what we found is that, what do all of these brands have in common? Well, all of them have an NFT, have created an NFT project, or have ongoing NFT projects. And if we look up there, there's quite a variety of industries up there. Some are luxury goods, some are not so luxury goods. I'm not sure what category you'd put Bud Light in, but I would probably, some people might say that Bud Light's a luxury drink, especially if you're in college. Heck, even Martha Stewart, she's joined in. I'm not sure why there's a picture of Pete Davidson with Martha Stewart, but he seems to be dating every popular celebrity nowadays. And so we went through and we coded these different NFT projects. So the first thing to really kind of emerge here that was interesting to us was a majority of these projects come from 4 distinct product categories. The food and beverage category, so we heard Mike talk earlier about Wendy's opening up a virtual store, but also apparel companies are becoming heavily involved. As you might imagine, the event access component of NFTs, movies and TV and sporting events, they're all getting heavily involved in this space. And they make up a large majority of this space, 68%. And so the next thing that we did is we wanted to get into, well, what is the selling point of all of this? Some of these NFTs are sold exclusively as the digital art pieces. So when we think of the Bored Apes or the pixelated cats, some of them are sold exclusively as that. But what we found is that a majority of them are sold it with something else. So in some instances, your NFT, you get your NFT and it acts as an event access token. And so what we might imagine for that, it's no surprise that we see that for movies and TV and sports, the NFT acted to commemorate some sort of event. So if you went to the Super Bowl, you got an NFT of your Super Bowl ticket. And it also served as your access to the game. But also they're doing this for old movie series. So Star Trek has their own NFTs project going. A variety of different movies have begun different NFT projects. And so that was really a big part in the movies and TV space. And for apparel brands, rather than event access, they were often tied to a physical product. So when you buy your NFT, it also is attached to a physical product. And we're going to give some examples of those later. But that is far and away, apparel was combining their NFTs with a physical purchase. And another one that seemed like it was a pretty common theme, although it didn't really show up in particular, there wasn't any brand or product category that really stuck out, was a considerable amount of them supported a cause of some type. In other words, the proceeds of this NFT will go to the Boys and Girls Club of America. And this has become kind of a bit of a sticking point with NFTs. And for my crypto experts here, why is this, especially as it relates to social and particularly environmental causes, why has this become somewhat of a sticking point with consumers? Yes? Yep, so there's traceable, but also to mint an NFT on most blockchains, it's tremendously energy wasteful. But actually there's now become new different types of ways to mint NFTs that are more environmentally conscious. And so that's also kind of become another selling point that they have. But interestingly enough, what we found is that, you know, in this movie and TV space and sports space, they're less likely on average than your average company to have it associated with a particular cause. And so that was another kind of interesting point that came up to us. And so to kind of give you an idea of what these NFTs look like, we're going to go through some NFTs and talk through them and guess how much they sold for. So this is one that I really like, the Coca-Cola Friendship Box. So because this kind of touches on every single, Coca-Cola said, let's find all of the boxes that we had up there and let's check every single one. So the first one was an event we were talking about. It was to commemorate some event, and this was put out on International Friendship Day. If you ask me what day is International Friendship Day, I have no clue, but it was to commemorate that event. So we have our event access, check. It also was, all of the proceeds went to the Special Olympics. So that is, now we have it supporting a charity as well. When you bought this, what you got is you got a puffer jacket that said Coca-Cola along the front that you could use and wear with your avatar in the metaverse. So it also came with a digital product that you could wear in virtual reality. But not only that, you got a Coca-Cola fridge that was stocked up so that while you were hanging out in Decentraland or whatever virtual reality you wanted to be in, you could drink a nice cold Coca-Cola with your friend. And so does anybody have a guess as to what this sold for? Who thinks, raise your hand if you think over $1,000. Keep your hand raised if you think over $10,000. Over $100,000. So it was $585,000. Oh, don't worry, we're not done yet. So how about Johnny Walker? So most of us here are maybe not old enough to enjoy Johnny Walker, but it's a nice brand. It's a good brand of of spirits. And so what they did is they've made their way into the NFT space. And so when you buy this Johnnie Walker NFT, what you get is you get a physical 1-liter bottle brewed by Emma Walker. She's the master blender for Johnnie Walker. You also get the NFT bottle, which is the digital version. And on that bottle is a unique digital art piece by Ivona Tao, who's a generative AI artist. So in other words, every single NFT that they got was made by this AI program that she designed. And it's a specific type of art that's unique to every individual bottle. And then it also comes with a exclusive storytelling experience where you have access to this community where they actively, both the artist and the blender, engage with the audience and tell them about the story behind that bottle. Now this one, a regular bottle of Johnnie Walker, depending on how nice it is about $100. What do we think this one went for? Any guesses? Oh, raise your hand if you think over $200. Raise your hand if you think over $500. Raise your hand if you think over $700. So just for a low price of $775, you can both drink in the regular verse and the metaverse. So this has been popular, the luxury brand component to this. I saw something mentioned earlier in one of the presentations that this market is going to explode, and Morgan Stanley thinks particularly for luxury brands. And Tiffany & Co. is starting to jump onto this. So they released 250 NFTs, which are digital passes that can be minted and redeemed for custom designed CryptoPunk pendants. CryptoPunks were one of the earlier day NFTs that came out, and you had the matching NFT art piece along with it. Now, there was a price for entry for this, and there's kind of a common theme that's coming along with this, is that some of these NFT pieces are extraordinarily expensive that the traditional consumer couldn't access them. And so not only did you have to own a CryptoPunk of their own, but in order to get this, you also had to pay $50,000. And within 2 hours of launch, everything was sold out. So they sold 250 within 2 hours of announcing. But this doesn't always work. So Chevrolet wanted to promote their 2023 Corvette Z06. And they had an NFT tied to it, where they had this artwork, and the NFT was priced at $240,000 or 206 Ethereum. And so to give you an idea, the real car is worth about $90,000. And the one unique difference here was that they gave it a special paint job. And so this is a sign that, the market might have started to get its mind back, because for this particular one, there was 0 bids. 0 bids on this. And they actually extended the bidding window an additional 48 hours, still 0 bids. So Chevrolet, good try, but you failed. So there's been success stories, there's been failures, but so far kind of what we've talked about is kind of this space that's really inaccessible to most consumers. Like, I enjoy a nice whiskey once in a while, but I'm not spending $775 to enjoy one. But there's other accessible ways that companies are getting involved in this NFT space, so that not everyone needs to empty out their entire physical wallets just to get an NFT. So Dr. Squatch is a men's soap company. And what they did is they released limited editions of these soap bars for $6 to $8. And so 3 buyers of this specific Crypto Cleanse soap were randomly selected to receive an NFT created by Nikos, Crypto Dads, and a member of the brand. So you'll see a common theme that I've tried to mention along all of these is that they're involving the crypto and NFT community, specifically digital artists in those communities, and bringing it in to merge it with the brand. And what they got is they got an NFT art of the Dr. Squat's logo, and also a $500 gift card. So again, tying these into other rewards or perks associated with the brand. The Discovery Channel. I don't know about you guys, but the most wonderful time of the year is Shark Week. And so they had NFTs attached to Shark Week, where people who watch Shark Week, they put QR codes up on the screen, and they had NFTs that they were giving out to the people that were watching Shark Week. And if you collected all 12, then you received special access to merchandise and rewards. And so that's just kind of another way of how brands are able to engage their audience on a different level of, it doesn't always have to be this high price to entry. In this case, they were even offering them out for free. And as kind of a final example here, we had Old Navy, who celebrated, so again, keeping with this theme of you're commemorating some event, if you grew up like I did, where your mom dressed you and all of your siblings in those Old Navy shirts, every 4th, I'm seeing some nods, thank God I'm not the only one. So every single 4th of July, you'd get a Old Navy shirt, which it turns out, I didn't know they did this, but they have a mascot of their own who's called Magic the Dog. And so he plays a big role in this as well, of they created this drop where they had Magic the Dog wearing their current version of the Old Navy annual flag themed t-shirt. And so in a nod to when Old Navy was started, 1994, they made 1994 NFTs, and they sold all but one of them for 94 cents. So these brands are making these NFTs more accessible. So there's one end of this kind of high-end luxury NFT space, but brands are still coming into, I think brands are taking a more approachable way to come into this NFT space to say the casual, somebody just first coming into the NFT space and maybe doesn't want to spend a bunch of money in this space. And so this was just, and another big part of this was they also donated 100% of the proceeds to Boys and Girls Club of America, which makes, that was becoming a larger and larger theme that we've noticed has picked up. So we started tracking this in the beginning of 2021, and we've tracked it all the way through October, the beginning of this month. And what we found that's been increasingly, more and more that what we're finding is that the proceeds are donated to some cause in some way. And so some insights that kind of emerged for us from this, and this is, I just want to caution, this is super early stage research. Nowhere near kind of the final hurdle of where we're trying to go with it. And I'll talk on the next slide of where we are hoping to go with it. But our key takeaways from this, and I think we have some unique insights, is that there's a clear, on the consumer side, there's a clear segment of consumers that view NFTs as purely financial assets. And that's fine, that they view them purely as financial assets. I'm sure there's a large category of NFTs that are meant to do so in terms of, fine art collectibles. But there is a large majority of NFT buyers there's other attributes that are more important to them than strictly making money or NFTs holding their value. And this is more so related to brands in terms of getting access to perks or deals, supporting their favorite artists or their favorite causes, and then getting access to those communities, those brand communities. We, as marketers, we're constantly seeking out ways, how can we further engage our audience, and how could we get them where we can get in on the conversation with them. NFTs look like they're starting to open the door into that. And so and on the brand side, a basic playbook for brands has emerged. Well, to start off, what you need is you need some existing brand asset. So we saw with Old Navy, they have both something tied to an event, but they also have a mascot, or in the case of Coca-Cola, a heritage that they can bank off of. And also for Coca-Cola, an iconic logo that they can go off of. The second step in that playbook is to partner with a prominent artist in the digital space. So AI generative artist, or any sort of popular type of artist in the digital space. And anyone who's seen NFTs, some of the art doesn't have to be, it's not like it's amazing art. It can be seen as more abstract. The beauty of the art can be seen in more of an abstract way. And so that's another big theme that emerged. The third one is centered around an event. So an anniversary, for movies and TV, that's been a big one, is anniversaries of popular iconic TV shows. For sporting events, they have one annually. The Super Bowl, the World Series is coming up. The MLB's announced NFTs associated with the World Series already. And the fourth component to all of this is provide some utility along with it. That's becoming increasingly popular. It's not just an art piece. An art piece is a part of it. Provide some utility along with it of accompany with a physical purchase. Have it to give you access to the event, or when somebody buys it, they're given access to an exclusive community, or give them access to exclusive deals and codes, maybe allow them for pre-releases. And/or tie that to a cause. Because when doing this, you can make the blow of whatever it costs to purchase these NFTs. If it comes along with an altruistic cause, then it can soften the blow on the consumer's ease of mind. And so in terms of where we're going to go with this research, where do we want to go with this? Well, what we're really interested in is, how do NFT releases influence brand outcomes? Because in some of these cases, especially for the ones that are supporting a cause, they're not in this to make money, especially if they're donating the money to a cause. Well, then they are looking for some positive brand outcome. So what we're looking at is to link these NFT announcements and NFT releases to social media data. And to look at, all right, well, after they've released their NFT, how are consumers talking about their brand? And another part of what we're hoping emerges from this research is to look at, how are certain brands better positioned to benefit from NFTs? So that we can then guide brands to say, based on your brand characteristics, are you better suited for the NFT space or not? And so with that, I want to thank all of you for coming today. This has been a tremendous, I know I've learned a lot, so I hope that you all have learned a lot today. So thank you so much. Let's open it up to questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'm standing in between you and lunch, so I don't want to get in the way of that. Yep. Oh yeah, we got to bring up for the virtual audience. We need that.
So I know you mentioned previously that the process of minting an NFT right now isn't yet sustainable. And I was wondering if you've done any research or seen that consumers who are in this NFT space and literate about the entire process of creating NFTs, if there's any hesitancy to purchasing an NFT because of that sustainability piece. And it might be too soon at this point to really say, but if brands are keeping that in mind while creating and building out this NFT space as well.
That's a great question, and that's actually something that's come up that's come up more in terms of what we're reading from these releases. Of when they're announcing these, they make specific points that these are, they're calling them the more environmentally conscious ways to mint an NFT. Like Ethereum has their has opened up kind of this second type of platform to build on that is much more sustainable than the base Ethereum platform. And it was because that was a big concern of brands in general, was the optics of, do we mint an NFT when a lot of our push is to go towards sustainability? And then if you mint an NFT on an inefficient platform, then are you kind of going against that goal? So I think that plays a big role in brands' decisions to get involved in the NFT space, but also there's become much, like, there's now building blocks in place that are much more sustainable, and I think that's also attracting a bunch of brands into the space. So hopefully that answers your question.
Alex, we have a few questions from our virtual attendees. Andrea has a question about how NFTs could potentially be leveraged in an educational space. How would they work to teach school children, say, about history? How would it work? What kind of infrastructure would be needed in order to implement it?
That's a good question. So in the educational space, how could these be leveraged? Now, what it's seeming like is you don't necessarily need the base technology of the blockchain technology to make that necessarily accessible. I think in terms of broader themes of getting more into augmented reality or virtual reality, now those are where we could really see advancements in the educational space of, say, bringing things to life that could not necessarily be brought to life before. Now, one major advantage to all of this is authenticity components associated with blockchain technologies. And I think that's where we could get into really seeing some benefit, where we need to ensure authenticity of, say, an educational program. That I think that's where we would start to see more of the benefit come about. But that is a good question, and something that I might not exactly have the answer to. And I think that part of the reason why we're doing this today is that we're in such an early stage that we may not know exactly all of the applications yet. A great question, Andrea.
I kind of have two questions, if you don't mind.
$50 for each one.
Seriously? All right, so going with the price of entry that you mentioned earlier, you gave examples that not all NFTs are outrageously priced, but given on the consensus of the market that majority of people, I think you said 32%, are interested in getting profits from selling NFTs. So the general consensus is that they would price their NFTs high. How is it, I guess, how the NFTs could be marketed so more general consumers can get into the NFT market and then kind of expand onwards? That's the first question.
Yeah, so I think there is a couple factors at play there. So one is legitimacy of how do you get the average consumer into the market? And like a good analogy I've heard for this is like, one person with a cell phone was useless. Two people with a cell phone is okay, but millions of people with a cell phone makes it so that you need a cell phone. So it's part of it's adding legitimacy to the market so that there's more than just a small number of users in the market. So I think part of what's making this more accessible to your average everyday consumer is these lower cost NFTs that are associated with reliable brands. And you see like Old Navy, Gap, non-luxury brands that are getting in this space. I think that's bringing more legitimacy to how the average consumer can get involved, because once we start seeing this more and more for even companies like toy companies out there are now selling, Hot Wheels is selling NFTs. So it's when you get legitimacy across all ends of the spectrum of not only luxury brands are selling NFTs, that brands across all the spectrum are selling NFTs. That's part one of bringing legitimacy to it. But it's also values in the eye of the beholder. So it's one of those things that as more and more people join that, to get more and more people to join that NFT space, they're going to have recognize some value in NFTs. And that's part of why part of the conclusions that we draw from this is that it can't just be an art piece. Otherwise, you're only appealing to that small 32% of the market, maybe. If you want to appeal to that broader part of the market, you're going to have to attach other things to the NFT beyond just that digital art piece. It needs to be attached with something else that provides some utility or makes the consumer feel good about giving to a cause or supporting some cause or artist in some way.
Right, I guess my second question kind of ties into the first. So given how generations tend to lag when it comes to technology and innovation, I could probably see that this current generation and more so the next generation will be the ones that primarily use NFTs and things like Web3. I'm curious to know, how is the previous generation, maybe even the baby boomers who will most likely hold the majority of the wealth moving forward for like the next 10, 20 years, how will you introduce them into the NFT market so this way you could broaden that market space?
I think it's going to most likely go hand in hand with as we go from physical wallets to digital wallets. An interesting case is that in Africa they actually used Venmo type payments far before we did, and at a much larger scale than we did, which seems like it's somewhat backwards that a country that's technologically further behind would be using digital payments before it became mainstream in first world countries. And so I think part of it is when we start transitioning away from, if you think about it already, in my phone, my credit card information's saved to my phone so that every time I do a purchase online, it'll automatically purchase it. Now, when my dad tries to purchase something online, I get a call, or maybe 6 calls, about, hey, how do I put my damn credit card number in my phone? And I have to explain it to him. But so part of it's a little bit of coaching, but another part of it is it's a gradual shift. It's not like all of a sudden we turn the lights on and a generation starts using it. It's going to be a gradual shift that kind of seeps into our lives. It was kind of like, that's why I love Seth's chart on internet adoption, is that the internet, I grew up I was born in 1993. And so I remember putting floppy disks in and waiting for the dial-up internet to work. But I grew up, for the most part, with internet. But it never really seemed like there was a great big leap. And with this type of adoption, I think there's never going to be this great big leap, but it's going to be a gradual form of adoption over time. And yes, I will say probably it's safe to say that older generations will lag behind just because of a resistance to change. And also, all the kids that have grown up on Roblox, NFTs or that kind of tokenization and of having tokenized clothing and stuff like that is already so far ingrained in their lives that it doesn't seem like something new to them. But for older generations, and even to me, it seems like something new to me. So it's going to be that it more so seeps itself into the everyday nature of our being rather than kind of this snap and it's there.
We have another question from our virtual participants. Christy is looking from a consumer or an investor point of view, rather than waiting for brands or events to push NFTs into the space and in the market, is there a generally accepted central community or website that sells NFTs, or are there lists for events and brands that are currently running specials or sales?
So And hopefully she can clarify if I'm understanding this correctly, but before brands get to the point of even announcing them, is there kind of a marketplace for companies to act in that can facilitate these? I'm not personally aware of any. It does seem like a space that should emerge rather quickly, because when there are gaps in the market, they're going to be filled extremely quickly. But I know that brands have teams that are actively searching out these partnerships. And if we think about this, brands are actively searching out partnerships for influencers at all times, and building, creative content that's specifically geared towards influencers. So it wouldn't surprise me at all for there to be a marketplace where brands that want to make an NFT have a marketplace to do so and go in. Any other questions? Or are we starving for lunch? Oh, we have a question. Yep.
Hello? Okay, good, it's working. So my question is, for instance, with the Corvette example that didn't end up working out, I think the research behind the demographics becomes extremely important, because what happens if you take a Toyota Supra and pop that into the same exact formula? Is there a different outcome? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that and what kind of research is going in that direction.
I couldn't agree more. And one thing that stuck out to me is the perceived lack of thought behind it on Chevrolet's part, of making the distinction between just giving it a special color and failing to bring that to life in a way that's meaningful. Because you have the Corvette, which is loved by many generations. But then you need to tie it to your audience and know your audience better. And that's where I think Chevrolet fell short of the mark, because you saw a lot of the other NFT collaborations where you could definitely see it was well thought out in terms of the artist partnership. They knew that people that were fans of this particular digital artist or of this particular crypto community, they were involved in that, and they appealed specifically to that audience. Like, think about the Tiffany's making the CryptoPunks. One thing that became abundantly clear with the Chevrolet was they didn't really have that in mind. And as Mike was saying kind of earlier, this is the time for brands to test and experiment. And you don't have to go all in. Like, if we think about the cost that Chevy did with that, they took a existing model. They paid probably quite a bit for that mock-up of the artwork, but they changed the paint color on a car that was already going to be made anyway. So their all-in investment on that was not incredibly high. But I do agree with you in terms of the Toyota Supra, where you have a specific type of buyer for that car and offering a special edition of that car, that you're already thinking at a level of understanding that market a little bit better, and that market perhaps being more receptive to it. So I think your audience segment dynamics and socioeconomic dynamics there are incredibly important in terms of building that NFT, and it's got to be kind of designed with the consumer in mind from the beginning. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much.